He earns points by constantly hunting down immortal ogres. Every morning, a terrible beast rises again, getting stronger and faster the more you try to kill it. So sharp is his skill that he can slice them in half with one clean swing. Yet he treats the hunt like practice and spends his earnings to bring a dead tree back to life as a glorious apple tree. Those apples are so incredibly expensive that they make everyone's eyes pop. Once upon a time, he didn't have the power he has today. To really get the story, we have to go all the way back to the start. The world was fading away, leaving nothing behind but silence and no sign of life to be found. Suddenly, a special being showed up to tell us exactly what the world needed. The all-powerful one gave the order to go to another world, so the heroes who sent them left Earth to find new lands. From distant worlds, dispatchers bring back the treasures humanity needs to survive, a dream that drives our hero Chanu, who currently sorts through trash gardens but longs to join their ranks. After a long day of work, he steps into the busy reunion center where so many are desperately looking for news about their loved ones. He shoves his way through the packed crowd until he finally hits the front desk. The receptionist checked his log and realized Chanu couldn't afford the investigation he was hoping for. He insists that you wait and come back to him only after you have the money you need. He desperately asks for news, but gets shoved aside by the next customer. So he turns around and walks home with a firm, resolute stride, remembering how his dad was once a legendary veteran known as a Ritter-knee when he was just a boy. They never left each other's side, no matter what. But as Earth's problems got worse, he was sent out on a new mission. From that day forward, he never saw his father once more. After waiting forever, his mother finally left to search for his father, but Konu was left standing all alone. He has changed so much that the memories he once shared with them are beginning to fade. He has lost the memory of everyone he used to know so well. Suddenly, a bright flash of golden light hit his apartment door and knocked him hard against the wall. He drifted off to sleep from the biting cold, only to wake up and find that many hours had already passed. His phone suddenly screamed with an emergency alert, warning him of the dangerous shaking and blinding flash as a rocket plunged back to Earth. Things turn even darker when an S-rank hero retires in shame after admitting he couldn't save the people he was sent to protect. He couldn't save his god, came back alone and defeated, and confessed that the scary earthquake and bright light of his return had taken away all his power and right to act. The hero's voice breaks as he asks the group to take off his cape and do everything they can to save the planet. Everyone received terrible news because Earth's population fell below 500 million, making it nearly impossible to find high-ranking dispatchers. Chanu can't believe the guy just failed his mission and is walking away forever. But a sharp knock at the door stops him in his tracks, making him wonder just who could be standing outside. He rises and steps to the door, confused by the strange surprise since it's so out of the ordinary. As he swings the door open, a voice calls out, but nobody is there to answer. Just as he starts to think he's going crazy, a voice tells him to look down, and there he finds a cute talking bunny holding a tablet and staring right at him. A sight so terrifying that Chon-Su falls onto his rear, only for the rabbit to casually ignore the chaos and ask if his name is Chanu. The rabbit asks Konu to stop being so scared, telling him there was some great news to share. The rabbit beams with happiness, telling Konu how proud he is to begin his new job as a dispatcher. Chanu was so shocked by what he heard that he had to ask the rabbit one more time just to make sure he wasn't dreaming. The rabbit softly explains to Konu that getting picked still matters even if he feels confused. So since Konu is acting weird, they decide to find a new spot. As the rabbit walks down a strange hallway, he asks Chanu if he has any special talents, but Chanu laughs and says he's just the king of the trash pile and not even good enough to be a dispatcher. He is very good at trimming away the dead branches and shaping his garden plants. The rabbit felt like he'd been hit by the shocking news, while Chanu stood frozen, stunned that a stranger walked right up to him without knowing he was worthless. After calming down, the rabbit tells Chon-Su that even if he feels useless, everything has a reason and being chosen never changes. Chon-Su stares in shock, realizing he's finally standing in the dispatch center, a place he never thought he'd see that now offers him a real shot at something. They found a huge door, and the rabbit told them to go inside, so they could keep their conversation going. Before the rabbit could even finish speaking, Chanu was already at the door. He shoved the massive door until his arms ached, but it didn't budge, so the rabbit stepped in to ask what he was doing there. First, the rabbit points to the opening just to his right and says, "That is the path we must take." Chanu stares in disbelief as the rabbit gestures to a tiny door perfect for itself, ignoring how too small it is for humans, while Chanu reminds the creature that it's just a rabbit. Konu, thinking the rabbit is going crazy, says he has to leave, but the rabbit asks if he's really sure he made the right choice. The rabbit tells him he's failed every test ever taken, but now a once-in-a-lifetime chance has arrived, and the rabbit dares him to admit if such a moment will ever happen again in his whole life. The rabbit frantically tries to tell Chanu he isn't forcing him, insisting Chanu is free to go if he really wants to. Once Chanu heard those words, he had to squeeze through a tiny hole to follow the rabbit into his clean, sunny office. Chanu was shocked to discover a massive office where a tiny one should have been, but the rabbit explained that a special world exists just for him, leaving Chanu bewildered until the rabbit revealed is called block-type land grabbing, and an event is currently taking place there. Konu's eyes went wide with shock at the sight, and the rabbit thought he must know the secret. Nadu shakes his head, admitting this is the very first time he has ever heard such a story. The rabbit claims that lately, everyone wants the world because it is the only place where a god has chosen to protect us. Chinu's eyes sparkle with interest when a god is mentioned, but the rabbit notices his mood changing and quickly tells him that his choice has nothing to do with what just happened. Konu asks the rabbit which god it speaks of, and the rabbit replies that all gods are just a sign by luck. Since Chanu is his favorite, he might as well let him choose which god to follow. Then the rabbit pulls out 3 cards and asks Chon-Su if he is ready to pick one, leaving him confused because he has no clue which one is good or which one is bad. The rabbit whispers to Chanu that this moment might never come again, and Chanu nods to show he understands. Chanu's memory of his father made him so angry that he couldn't even think about hesitating. Konu grabs his card, and suddenly a terrifying image of the god flashes right before his eyes. He is so scared that he can't even move. As he looked at the card he'd picked, he finally realized he'd drawn the god of negation, which had a 44% chance of appearing. The rabbit snapped at him for acting like a coward, claiming what he just saw was just a trick to fool his eyes. Chanu's heart hammered so hard he thought it might burst, leaving him to wonder what kind of god would ask for a life so huge it nearly cost him everything. Chanu knows that picking that god is a terrible mistake because his very name is enough to start trouble. Janu rose with trembling legs and nervously asked the rabbit if he could draw the cards again, only to be stunned when the rabbit said yes. Chanu snatched the card, and suddenly the god of negation appeared in his hand just like before. Chanu was so angry that he convinced himself the game was rigged, since it made no sense for the same god to keep appearing over and over again. The rabbit then told him not to worry, explaining that the cards were just fine. Chon-Su is stunned by the rabbit's sudden shift in expression and warns Konu that this is his last chance to pick a card, begging him to make the right choice this time. Chon-Su was so irritated that he eagerly grabbed any option he could find, just hoping it wasn't the god of negation. When he turned over the next card, a brilliant green light filled Chu with hope because he had pulled the legendary goddess of abundance, a rare card that appears less than 1% of the time. Just as he was about to lose interest, he caught a glimpse of the goddess and thought she was so beautiful that even the rabbit could see Chon-Su's imagination dancing in his eyes. The rabbit grinned widely and asked Konu if he wanted to give it another try. Chu freezes in shock as the man tells him this is his one last shot. After Konu asks the rabbit what happens if he picks this card, the rabbit urges him to leave immediately, leaving Konu stunned until the rabbit reminds him that this is a rare chance to become a hero instead of just a dispatcher, then begins to paint a picture of everyone cheering for him. Rabbit promises him that being a dispatcher will make his life 10 times better than it is right now. Shanu suddenly realizes the rabbit was right, because he's always felt like his life has been worthless. Once he made his choice, the system announced he was chosen to serve the goddess of abundance. The goddess steps out before him just as he had dreamed, and Konu smiles, knowing that with her beside him, he can conquer anything. Konu halted the rabbit and asked where it was heading. Suddenly, the rabbit slammed open a door to tell us it was time to go, and without waiting, he shoved Chanu right inside. Chanu is so terrified that he can't even ask the rabbit if it's safe to walk through the doorway. The rabbit laughs at the glowing doorway as a beautiful sight, but Chanu sees nothing but a deadly trap waiting to kill him. But he won't give up. Instead, he vows to soar to the top just to show everyone who doubted him was wrong. As the rabbit quietly creeps up and shoves him into the doorway, the man is so lost in his dream of becoming a big star that he doesn't see the danger coming. Suddenly, someone yelled at the rabbit for breaking the rules, even though he knew better. They say they have no choice but to turn to Chanu, the only one who can help. As Chon-Su gets sucked into the swirling portal, a loading screen pops up with a tip explaining that the number shown just tells you how big the gods group is. Konu froze in shock, realizing the number wasn't just random luck, but a terrifying sign of what was coming. After suffering through terrible pain, Chon-Su finally wakes up in his new world, only to realize he's just scratching the surface of something truly important. He looked around and saw that the empty wasteland stretched out in every direction. He found himself stranded in a cursed place where the goddess forgot to send a hero to save him. With tears streaming down his face, he knew there was no way to escape what was coming. Kono had always imagined a world teeming with life, but all he could see was a lonely, empty wasteland. Suddenly, another window pops up to tell Kono he's the goddess's chosen one with only one job: dig up as much land as he can. Before doing anything, he stops and quickly glances around to see what's nearby. He makes up his mind to find the goddess, and while he runs, he trips over an old, worn sickle and wonders if someone had just used it and thrown it away. Since he works with plants, the sickle feels like a second skin to his hand. Suddenly, something huge crept up behind him so fast he felt like a monster was about to eat him whole. Chanu shivers in fear, realizing he hasn't even met the goddess, and with a monster ready to eat him, he knows dying right now is the very last thing he wants. He spun around and swung his sickle with all his might to scare off the monster, only to find he had almost chopped up a tiny, cute hamster instead. Kono crouched down to peek at the tiny hamster and immediately saw that the little beast held no grudge against him. Suddenly getting a bright idea, he lunges for the hamster as a prize, only to hear the tiny animal let out a tiny scream of pure terror. He decides to leave it be as long as it doesn't get in his way. Suddenly, the tiny hamster spun in a circle and took off running. The little hamster stops just far enough to be safe, waves its tiny paws, and invites Chon-Su to join it. Chon-Su chased the tiny hamster, which was surprisingly fast on its little feet. Chon-Su keeps wondering where they're going until they find stream, where Chanu eagerly grabs his bottle to drink the fresh water and feel refreshed before asking the hamster if he knows where the goddess is resting. The hamster squeaks at him, but they can't understand each other because they speak in totally different languages. Chano sped up to keep right behind the hamster, desperate to see where its tiny adventure would take him next. Soon, the group finds a giant tree that looks as dead and dry as any on Earth, and Chon-Su suddenly steps on Jin-sen's foot, leaving him completely shocked. He can't believe that such a precious piece of Jin's Sing lies in such a dirty spot. But the hamster suddenly grabs the treat from Kono, leaving Chon-Su puzzled because he thought the snack was just for the little rodent. Just then, Chanu's screen lit up with a message confirming he had finally found the goddess. Chon-Su feels something's wrong because he can't see the goddess anywhere around him. As Chon-Su shouts in frustration, the hamster suddenly yanks on his leg, making him think the tiny creature is just pulling a prank. He grabbed the hamster and told it he was too busy to play right now. Suddenly, the hamster's face reveals something Kono had missed. Everyone was totally shocked when the limp ginseng turned out to be the real goddess. Kono couldn't believe his eyes because the goddess he loved was too beautiful to become a withered root. So he even used a magnifying glass to check if it was really true. And in that split second, he finally sees the truth, grabbing his head in pain as he realizes those early warnings were just the first clues to the terrible disaster now waiting for him. Chanu remembered how the numbers on his cards went up, showing that the god's power was getting stronger. Chanu couldn't believe that the god of destruction was actually just a powerful card that kept appearing over and over again. Kono wonders if the goddess has faded and disappeared because her power is gone. Kono watches the goddess with worried eyes, confused and scared that she still won't wake up. He starts to panic, thinking he just stomped on a goddess, only to be greeted by a hamster staring back with the confused, empty eyes of total idiot. Chanu stops pouring water on the goddess just as he realizes it might wake her up, and then a bright green light suddenly shines out from her body. Chon-Su realizes the water works, so he floods the goddess with it until her strength comes back. The goddess almost drowns and starts begging Chanu to stop before it's too late. Just as the goddess wakes up, Chanu celebrates his quick CPR and the hamster cheers that its master is back, only for Chanu to bow and declare himself her apostle right away. The goddess struggled to lift herself up just enough to catch a glimpse of her apostle. Kono stood in a total mess of confusion, not knowing which way to turn until a Windows notification suddenly popped up to tell him that he could get stronger by using his skills. Chanu stood frozen, unable to believe that such incredible talents were happening right before his eyes. Chanu spots a special gift from a goddess, and even though nobody explains what it does, he guesses it must help make the crops look beautiful. Just then, he uses the blessing and finds out it means decapitation, which shocks Chanu because taking off heads just to live a rich life feels too violent to him. But he decided that the goddess of plenty would never hand over such fierce power to him. Kono glances at the goddess, hoping for a sign that tells him if he truly has to cut off a head. The goddess's weird reaction leaves him completely confused, so he decides the only thing left to do is chop off a head. Kono quickly weighs the consequences of this turning point, only to suddenly realize the hamster is about to lose its head. A tiny hamster leaps around with pure joy to celebrate the goddess coming back to life. He didn't know that Chan-su was watching him with eyes full of hate. The hamster spins around to see Chan-su holding a sharp sickle that looks like it will slice him in half, so he bolts away before the blade can fall. Chanu chased the hamster until it curled up behind the goddess for safety, seeing no way out. Chanu gently tells the shaking hamster his next move is just for the goddess, but suddenly they both freeze in pure terror. Chana glanced back to see a terrifying monster standing right behind him. Chan-su sees the hamster leap before the goddess and instantly knows it isn't a monster. Chan-su sees his mistake and knows he must defeat the real monster to fix things, but he's not sure if he can actually do it. Even though everything seemed against him, Konu held his sickle tight and rushed at the monster, counting on a special power to show him exactly where to cut to sever its head. He activates his deadly head-cutting move, leaps right at the monster, and whacks it with his sickle, cleaving it in two with one powerful slash. The hamster and the goddess stood there, completely stunned as they saw it. Chena walks back to the goddess, keeping his face calm and acting like nothing wild just happened. After the hamster nearly buried him alive by thinking he was a scary monster, Chana bowed to the small creature to apologize. Chan-su begged the hamster for forgiveness, and when the tiny creature smiled and gave a thumbs up to show he wasn't mad, Chan-su was so relieved he named the hamster Hamel, making him blush with delight at the perfect name. Suddenly, a pop-up told Chanu that his moves could move the monster's head, revealing it was an immortal ogre he could kill again and again. Chan-su couldn't believe they called the beast an immortal ogre when it looked as though it was made of pure meat. Just as Chan-su watches, a new message pops up on her screen, telling her the offering is sent and the goddess now owns it. Chanu turned to look at the goddess and found her even more stunning than before. Chanu sees that by fighting hard and killing monsters, he can help the goddess become strong again. Seeing the goddess burn with fire, Chana dashes off to hunt down even more monsters. She faces a horde of undead ogres and gets a new clue about secret game spots that only the system controls, meaning players can't trade them. Chanu stood there wide-eyed, trying to figure out when he'd actually managed to rack up those points. Though times are hard, it's actually a good sign for him, so he decides that getting rid of the ogres is his next big goal. Konu feels a wave of joy, knowing his deadly head-cutting power makes taking down the ogres easy work. Janu dashes at the ogres, unleashes his secret move, and cuts them in two with one mighty swing. Another glowing hint tells him he can earn points by defeating monsters. Chanu snatches the Gohad like a war trophy, ready to hunt down every monster the system just gave him. After killing 4 giant immortals, Chanu feels a wild thrill and wants to hunt down 100 more just to satisfy his craving for a fight. Once the first wave of monsters is defeated, Hemstall basks in the glory on Konu's shoulder, acting as if he fought them all alone. Chan-su wonders why they call that beast an immortal ogre when it dies so easily, which shouldn't happen to a creature meant to live forever. Since no one else could answer his question, he realized that keeping his sword sharp was the only way to finally get the answer he needed. Chan-su stepped back to the tree and found the goddess looking even more breathtaking than before. Chan-su grinned as the results came in faster than he could have ever hoped. As the goddess starts turning back into her real self, he is flooded with a wave of pure happiness. Once the goddess points to the giant tree, leaving Chinu confused until he understands she wants to climb, he helps her up, only for her to call him closer. The system tells him he can unlock the blessing of abundance, but every new skill he learns will cost him points. Dressy puts a hand on the tree to wake up its gift of plenty. He uses up all his skill to turn the tree into a plentiful source of food again. After he stops, he freezes in shock to see the tree is an apple tree with fruit hanging from every single branch. He reaches out and snatches an apple that was big as a small melon. Even though he has never seen an apple and really wants to eat it, he knows it shouldn't be that big, so he decides to give the first one to the goddess instead. Xiao stands frozen in silence as the goddess devours the apple in an instant, making him realize how powerful she is and how risky it would be to make her angry. Chano leaps onto a tree to pluck apples for him and Hamstall to share, knowing he must be strong because the goddess he serves never plays games. Jummu takes a bite of the apple and gasps in delight because it tastes so amazing. As he quietly munches on his apple breakfast, the goddess across from him wonders how Kona manages to slay so many monsters in just one day. He even managed to wake up a giant tree in just one day. A cold shiver ran through the goddess as she wondered how a boy like Konu could exist, especially since she herself was once the mighty guardian of food, known for her incredible abundance and the finest harvests. When the corruption god grew too strong to fight, Abundance had to run from her old life and hunt monsters just to stay alive. But with her army too weak to fight, they had to twist their monster-killing power into just collecting heads, a desperate move that saved no one and left Chanu confused why they were gathering bodies instead of just cutting off heads. Since her warriors couldn't fight well, she could only pray they tried their absolute hardest. Even though she froze in terror at the sight of Chonsu, who looked nothing like the man she had dreamed of, the goddess knew she could no longer deny that Shanu was hers. Just as Chonsu grabbed another apple, the goddess suddenly wrapped her arms around his leg and held on tight. Chonsu is so scared that the goddess will eat him, but she is just hugging him to say thank you for everything he has done. Just as the goddess fell asleep on the altar, a sudden, violent crash of thunder erupted from the sky. Chonsu is scared his noise will wake the sleeping goddess, but to his surprise, she stays fast asleep. Right then, Chonsu realizes that munching on just apples won't keep him going. Just then, the system informs him that his delivery is finally on its way. Hansu glances around in disbelief, unable to believe that this could actually be real. But he can't send a message unless he can get back home to Earth. Seeing that Hamsul is just as tired, he rests him beside the goddess and covers them both with leaves like a blanket. While at the Reincarnation trading company, the busy Apostle Hyujin storms in her boss's office to scold him for piling on more work even though they already have to deliver apples. The order says no money will change hands, so Hyujin has to trade apples for goods, which makes her scream at her boss to ask if she messed up, only for him to dismiss her fears and explain that this trip is actually a well-deserved break where she won't have to work. Her boss told her that staying behind would just pile on more work, so he urged her to use this trip to clear her head. Eugene insists she's the only choice since nobody else can help, causing her boss to nervously laugh as she proves him right. Her boss urges her to speed up, saying a lucky treasure could be waiting just ahead. He waves goodbye, hoping her path is filled with only good things. After checking the delivery logs and worrying about big tasks ahead, Hyujin checks on her team while Chanu gathers apples and Hamel playfully eats them until Konu catches him and scolds him for messing around. He says the apples are for trading because he's meeting someone later today. After traveling all the way, Konu acts cool on his first day to impress, but while signing up for the event, he discovers the world is divided into blocks and a massive conquest summon is about to begin. Even though the land looks plain, a wall guards its edge and costs you a movement ticket to cross into the next block. Chonsu finally realizes he is completely alone in the wild and has 7 days left to reach the nearest village. Chonsu beams with joy, knowing her package is only 2 days away. Kanu is happy to rush if he can get those sleeping bags back in a hurry. He even got a soft cushion ready for the goddess to rest on while she slept. Chanu fights hard to earn the goddess's kindness and stop her from turning on him. Chonsu feels a surge of joy as the immortal ogres start showing up on their own since yesterday. He finally understood that immortal just means someone who keeps coming back to life. Danu ignores everything except his goal, to kill as many enemies as he can and rack up points. As he battled the monsters, he almost got crushed from behind, but he managed to dodge just in time. He realizes with a jolt that the monsters are closing in fast, but his own powers have grown stronger to match the danger. While Konu feels safe, Hyujin watches from above as the crowd sees him act like a powerful hero who treats monsters like a simple snack. Long ago, hunters hunted the unkillable ogre as the ultimate prize for its huge points, but no matter how many times they knocked it down, it would rise each morning even stronger, chasing them relentlessly across the map while they cursed their wounds until they finally collapsed. Chanu cuts right through that monster like it's made of paper. Eugene starts to think Chanu is so reckless that he doesn't care about the monster coming back to punish him. Gujin notices that Chonsu isn't even taking a moment to clean up the monsters they've already defeated. After watching so many mighty fighters, she believed Chanu was a true master of the blade. She still couldn't get why a master of his craft would waste his time picking apples when he could do so many other amazing things. Hyujin realizes Chanu isn't a skilled swordsman, so to keep him from getting angry, he chooses to handle him with the gentlest touch possible. After Chanu wiped out the horde of immortal ogres, he watched in shock as the huge points he just earned began multiplying faster than he could count. The blessing made apples worth 1,000 points, so Chanu knew scoring 100 was easy, turning the mysterious shrine into a lucky jackpot. Just then, Hyujin stepped forward, bowed low, and told him that she was from the trading company and had arrived with Chonsu's delivery. Shanu grabs Hessen's hand and shakes it with excitement, telling him he's amazed she found the block right the first time. Hessen shakes with fear as he watches the mighty Chonsu, knowing he must tread lightly to avoid angering her. Just then, Hyujin spots the squishy hamster and wants to hug it so badly that Chanu worries she's sick, but she's just eager to touch it. Chanu nudges Hyujin to follow him, promising to show her just where the apples are hiding. When she finally arrived, the sweet smell of the apples was so strong that she couldn't help but speak up about it. Chansu nodded and said the apples had grown beautifully. She stood frozen before the towering tree, staring up at it in total shock because it looked like an apple tree. Chana grabbed an apple and asked Hessen if she'd mind taking a bite. Hessen picks up the apples and gasps at just how big they are. She braced herself for a sour bite since huge fruits usually lose their sweetness, but one taste proved her wrong with a flavor so amazing it made all her worries disappear. Yujin took a bite of the apple and loved how sweet yet slightly sour it was, so she decided it was worth at least 100,000 gold. Essen asks Konu if he really put a 2,000 gold price on the apples, and Konu nods and says yes. Essie whispers to Konu that his apple price is silly, so the nervous Konu agrees the cost is too high and timidly asks the lady how much she'd pay for them. Gujuin shocks Konu by suggesting he charged 20,000 gold for every apple, and when she reveals that department stores might pay even more, Konu nearly loses his mind while staring in disbelief. Yet Gujuin keeps the secret to protect her long-term customer, and because she knows the truth is a fate Chanu cannot escape. Yujin leans in and whispers to Chansu that these aren't just any apples, but the very first ones to hold a flavor she has never tasted before. Yujin confesses that this one apple feels more precious to her than any fancy treat from home. She suggests holding the price at 20,000 gold to keep things moving fast. She slides a formal contract across the table and tells Konu that the rest of his money won't come until he signs it. Konu snatches the pen, dives into the contract, and starts reading to see exactly what he's getting himself into. After realizing the deal worked in his favor, he smiled and then asked to change one part of the agreement. Hyujin is stunned to see her company's value jump, but Chansu reveals it was a deliberate move to deepen their connection and honor the truth she shared about the apple. Chansu reaches out to shake her, who jumps a bit in surprise before quickly thanking him for taking the contract and handing over the items he needed. He sent away for seeds, food, and the pots and pans he needed to cook. Jesujin hands him a special trading company egg as a gift, vowing that it will make his farming work a whole lot easier. He hands the eggs to Chanu with a joke about Chanu already having a familiar to care for, only for Chanu to look around in surprise since he can't see the creature at all. Hyujin shows Hamstall to Chansu, explaining that adding more points makes the egg stronger, but too much will crack it, so Chansu must stop the moment it starts shaking before trying it himself to get the perfect feel. Jun asked when the apples would be ready, and Shina said just one day was enough, which shocked Hejian, who had been expecting them every single day. After dragging on their long and boring talk, they finally agreed on when to meet and how many friends would come, officially sealing their first deal. Now that Hyujin was gone, Chanu stepped forward to thank the goddess for hiding her while Hessen was still there. Chanu stared at his pile of supplies, amazed that he'd made so much money just selling apples, yet he knew deep down that all of it came from the goddess. Just as he looks, he sees the goddess holding the eggs tight, forcing him to hatch them faster but costing him more points than he thought. He comes to the hard truth that the only path ahead is to hunt down and kill more monsters. Chansu is glad for how far they've come, but he knows tough times are still waiting right around the corner. Janu faces the challenge without fear, knowing he was built for it. While back at the trading company, Hyujin rushes to her boss to insist that Shun is Korean and likely part of the fighting groups. Her boss couldn't believe that a fighter could suddenly grow such a huge pile of apples. Wajjun told the story of how Chanu cut the heads off the undead using only a rusty sickle. His boss believes the guy is chasing the Swordmaster path by risking his life just like Rowan did. The boss decides to hide Chanu away rather than set up guards, and Hizugijin thinks it's a smart move. He gnaws on his apple slices until Hessen tugs his hand to remind him to share. Then Chanu dashes back to his world of plenty to hatch his eggs and wonders if a cute or strong monster will emerge, only for a crack in sudden light to make him think a powerful SS rank familiar is about to appear. Chansu's smile disappears the moment a tiny chick breaks out of its egg. He couldn't believe everyone made such a big deal over getting him a huge chicken when he had actually just wanted a new worker. He starts to think about what to do with the tiny chick, and the very first idea that jumps into his mind is to raise it up just so he can eat it later. He still can't bring himself to cook and eat the chick he spent 120,000 points on, fearing it would make him too attached, so he decides to name her Ari. Just as he was getting used to the first Ari, the second egg suddenly started to hatch. Just like last time, Chansu is buzzing with excitement, sure this will be a big success. Just as Chanu eagerly awaited his magical new partner, a pig tumbled out of the egg, causing his face to drop so hard that he instantly named it Doji, realizing he'd been tricked and received just a regular animal for his kitchen instead of a companion. Just then, Ari and Doji approach the goddess to say hello, and she begs them to forgive her for not being able to protect them until the very end. They also drop to their knees in sorrow, pleading for forgiveness for failing to serve their goddess with the devotion she deserved. The goddess is moved by their truth, but warns them to watch out for her own apostle. She warns the two that Chanu doesn't know they work for her and could sell them the moment they seem useless to him. To make things even worse, he might actually eat them, letting the terrifying presence of Chenu Ankh wash over them and proving the goddess was right. The goddess tells the pair to act perfectly until Chenu learns how to speak. The two chose to trust the goddess and just watch as things happen on their own. The next morning, Chanu went out to hunt the undead as usual, but Doji and Ari felt their fear vanish as they watched him sprint and slash through the chaos, only for Doji to panic when he remembered the goddess's warning after Chanu stared at them with a strange, dangerous look. Just as Ari and Doji wipe the sweat from their brows with towels, they cheer on Chonsu's hard work and hand him a towel to freshen up. After seeing Konu's power with their own eyes, the two finally understand the goddess's lesson on what it truly means to be useful. Once everything was clean, Chonsu thanked the two for their kindness and gave them an apple. Doji runs to grab the plate, while Ari acts like he doesn't plan to eat it all. Chonsu feels happy feeding the two pigs because he once heard that grapes make them taste the best. Rushes grabs the food from Doji, desperate to stop him from growing into the flavor Chanu wants. But Ahari simply couldn't stop himself from enjoying the sweet apple Chanu had prepared with so much care. Even with all that going on, he just stays calm. Konu throws the grains ahead and jumps right on them, knowing he won't end up as a fried chicken like Doji. Afterward, Chanu takes up farming by having Doji turn over the soil while Ari plants the black bean seeds. Chanu dashes across the ground to cover the earth, sprinkles water on the seeds, and whispers a blessing of plenty over them. Eventually, Chanu's farm was full of thriving plants. As Chanu holds the seed tightly, Ari's eyes instantly lock onto it the moment he spots it. He rushes to Chanu, but he quickly hides the seed to show that the first harvest belongs to the goddess. Chanu handed the seed to the goddess as always, and she took it inside her the same strange, familiar way she does every time. Chanu calls Ari and Doji over for a meal, letting them know they'll be busy planting potatoes later. For the first time, Ari ate her fill, just like Doji, and when they both looked like overstuffed balloons, she figured he must have finally lost the fight against hunger. While Chonsu feels pure joy seeing the two of them eat well, his happiness pushes him to plant even more crops for them to enjoy. Just as he starts thinking about how well his apples are selling, his boss notices they're the very last ones left on the shelves. A huge crowd showed up, but nobody was ready to spend a dime, just like we knew they wouldn't. He wrapped the apple in a special way to make it look extra nice. The folks are shocked that a single tiny apple costs a crazy 200,000 gold coins. He rubs his head in frustration because he can't get anyone to try the apple, even though he is certain a single bite will make everyone love it. Suddenly, he hears the sound of someone purchasing the apples. He rushes to the attendant only to hear that every single apple is gone. He still can't believe it's gone, even though a huge pile was right there just moments ago. The attendant admitted that one customer tasted a single apple and then bought the whole supply. When a manager sees Rohan's name on the payment slip, he realizes the customer is Rohan himself, the man who created that special training method. The manager realizes that Rohan, a legendary sword master, has just found a treasure. The news went wild with everyone insisting that Rohan became a sword master just by eating those apples. A week after Chanu discovers how amazing his new life is, his boss Ryu gets buried under nonstop calls from people desperately wanting to buy the legendary miracle apples. With his potatoes packed, he's ready to start cooking. While Doji cooked the tasty potatoes, he pressed his leg against her to show how much he cared. Chonsu just tells everyone he's not cooking the potato for them because he's already had his dinner. Even so, he lets him eat a few before Hujan arrives and is stunned to discover that all of Chonsu's pets have already hatched. Jizu Xian stares at a pile of soft teddy bears she wants a hug to feel better, while Hamsel and the others quickly hide the goddess from Hujin's intense stare before Chanu steps up to ask why she's here, only for Hujin to tell him she has some good news. She pulls out the receipts to show Chonsu that every apple was sold at the marked price, leaving her stunned that it all happened in just 2 days, while Hujin adds that the real surprise is how many people are now begging for a taste. Chonsu was shocked to see apples worth a fortune, since he only remembered paying less than 0.000 gold for them before. Chanu realizes each apple is worth more than 60,000 gold, so if he sells just 50 in a day, he could walk away with a mind-blowing 3 million gold. Konu's head nearly burst when he found out $1 billion in profit was just waiting for him. Konu feels happy because he believes following this path might lead him to a clue about his parents. Chanu tells Ujin he isn't a mood killer, but he asks how long she thinks the excitement over the Emperor apples will last. Chanu sees the apples selling fast now, but he knows the high prices won't last forever. Chan-su is told that giving away 100 apples a day to 1 million people won't run out their supply for another 27 years. Ansu couldn't believe the news and thought it was too crazy to be true, so Hujin quickly told him not to worry. Jun pushed for more, asking if he thought about planting a bigger apple tree. The Makuchos nervously smiled and told her he'd grown other crops too, promising they tasted just like apples, which made Hujuin's eyes light up with greedy hunger, just like a goblin's. Chanu asked her to hold still just a second so he can bring her the potatoes first. Yukjin took a bite of the potatoes and felt her heart swell with pure happiness at how sweet they tasted. As she starts imagining all the amazing things that could happen if she takes care of that potato, Konu suddenly shows up with a plate piled high with pancakes and fries. Yezujin quietly brushed her tears aside and took a bite of the food waiting in front of her. She points out that those crispy potato fries are so big they could be a full meal on their own. Chana finishes his quick combo of moves by tossing in some roasted sweet potatoes to wrap up the set. The moment Doji and Ari taste the dish, they go crazy and beg him for another bite. After Chanu invites everyone to share a meal, he notices Ari looks thin because Doji has been stealing her food, while Hemstall jumps onto the table to join Hujin, and Chanu eagerly asks her about the potatoes he plans to sell. After saying thanks to Chanu for the amazing feast, Hujin asks if he can learn to grow his own crops and find a way to make even more apples. Chana says he needs more points to win, so he decides not to spend them all on farming right now. Eugene tells Chanu that his hard work is noticed, but she insists he put more energy into picking apples. Hujin points out that every apostle is Korean, and he believes this truth holds up the entire world's culture. Hujin gushes about how tasty the food is, but warns Chan-su that selling only crops won't earn them big profits like apples do, no matter how much people want to buy them. Hujin dropped to her knees and begged Chan-su to make growing apples his main job. When Chanu realizes he can't change her mind, he suggests eating 100 apples a day, and her eyes light up with happy wonder at the idea. She thanked Chanu for listening to her advice and writing it down. So the next day, he went out, as usual, to hunt monsters. Doji looks at Ari and wonders if they really have to guard Chanu every single time he steps away. Ari yells at Doji, claiming that only the two of them can keep watch since Hamsel is totally useless. Unaware that they're being followed, Konu mistakenly thinks they are fighting partners, while Chan-su firmly believes that creatures who only know how to eat could never be real familiars. His confidence vanishes the moment he sees the two of them being chased by a monster that shouldn't even exist anymore. Chan-su feels awful for praising two people so much when he now thinks they weren't as amazing as everyone said. Just then, Doji trips and lets the undead monster rush at him, while Chanu can't reach out in time and Konu's loud screams fail to distract the beast. Chanu swung his sickle with every bit of strength he had, but because the tool was so short, his blow did no damage at all. Just as Chan-su was stunned that the monster had vanished without a single strike from his sickle, he realized something was terribly wrong. He suddenly felt his special power surge, reaching out much farther than before. Konu took a step back and swung his sickle at the monsters to see if his plan could actually work. With one powerful strike that shattered a window and tested his new limits, he even learned a scary new ability that could cut off heads in a blink, shocking Chanu while giving him the strength to fight far more monsters. Chanu went on a wild rampage, cutting down so many monsters that Ari and Doji ran back to the goddess in fear, leaving her stunned when they returned so fast. Ari whispers to the goddess that Shinu might have grown stronger, but warns that learning to talk to others is just as important, which makes the goddess snap and tell her guards to stop, because she has never given such a gift to anyone. Doji whispered that his new move was called Mass Decapitation, a name so shocking that the goddess was left completely stunned. A slow warmth of beer spread through her as she realized for the first time that she had ever heard such a sound. Even a mighty goddess cannot guess what kind of person Chanu has become by now. She thought he was a dark angel from hell, but then the goddess revealed the truth, making Doji jump to the wrong conclusion that Ari had given Chanu his power, only for Ari to slap him for being foolish and tell him to stop making up stupid theories and just listen. Ari asked the goddess what had gone wrong, and she told him that the apostle's gift had changed. The goddess says that just as her magic has grown to gather anything, Chanu's power has changed to slice off many heads in a flash. Arrive gasped at the news that only the first ear apostles could do such a feat, and the goddess nodded, confirming that this was exactly why Chanu was so terrifying. He was relieved to see the goddess find his thanks so charming that it helped fix things. The goddess shows that Chanu's power is burning out of control like a wildfire, and that wild, fast growth is the only thing stopping them from being wiped out completely. The goddess vows to give Chanu the gift of speech when he returns. Soon Chanu returned, and the goddess beamed with joy as she offered him 2 new skills to pick, since an apostle's path had to be chosen right then and there. But she was certain he'd choose the one that helped him speak to other people. The goddess wants to tell Chanu to stay out of trouble, while also thanking him for everything he has done. After thinking for just a second, Chanu picked the prize of plenty, leaving the goddess totally shocked that anyone would choose such a daring gift. Chanu stood frozen, staring at the screen for a long time before finally choosing his best move. He discovered that his ability to talk to plants and animals was just a special gift. Ari shuddered at the scary idea that everyone would scream at him whenever they got mad, making him realize that picking that skill would lead to a truly hellish life. Realizing that ignorance feels good, he decides choosing communication skills would be a huge mistake. That is exactly why he ran after the dream of finding plenty. The moment he picked the skill that promised plenty, he noticed everyone around him suddenly feeling really down. Now he has 2 new powers marked on the board, but like last time, the board stays silent on what they really do. Chansu picks out an apple to show the goddess his respect, but he is stunned when she turns away and starts crying. Chana glances at his status screen and realizes that the points he earns are entirely up to how he decides to use his skill. Chansu couldn't figure out why the goddess was turning away the apple he had offered her. To cheer everyone up, he gave Hamster a pinch on the cheek and tickled Doji's tummy, but the missing points were still nowhere to be found. Just as he's guessing what's wrong, Hizujin races in to say he needs to take the block and guard it. Chansu is so shocked by this that he instantly wonders if an attack is coming. Hujin says the Emperor Apple is so wildly popular that they can only sell 1 to each person, but over 5,000 excited fans have already signed up and are happy to wait as long as it takes to get a taste. It makes perfect sense that greedy raiders would steal apples and smash blocks like Konus, especially since his area is outside the safe zone with no protection, leaving Huzujin wishing for official backup that could have completely changed things. Chanu thought hard until he saw that only the goddess could save him, knowing that if he failed, she and the entire land would be lost forever. The very first step to fixing this trouble is to take control of the block, build a strong gate, and keep everything safe. Tanu promises to guard the nearby blocks to hide their home, bringing them closer to Hujin, who is thrilled because a new door will finally let them roam freely. Chanu can't believe the reservation suddenly went crazy, but Hujin tells him the whole place is going wild because of the strange power of the Emperor Apple. Nu feels confused by these claims until Hujin explains that many people think the apple can heal everything, a belief that completely shocks Chanu because he doesn't think the fruit is actually that powerful. Eugene lets the news weigh on him, while Chanu just shrugs it away, thinking it's no big deal since it's only an apple. As Rohan steps into the hospital, a nosy reporter with a camera is already waiting outside, ready to jump on him the second he arrives. Rohan made his way to visit his friend Yun-Su, who was a powerful alchemist. Rin tells Yinu he brought a get-well gift, and when she opens it, she finds a box of Emperor apples. Yinu stares in shock at the apples Rohan brought him, unable to believe it after hearing all those scary rumors. As Yinu takes a bite, he bursts with delight, shouting that the food is the perfect mix of taste and strength. Su stared at the apple with wide eyes and started asking questions, but Rohan just shook his head and told him he wasn't an expert on food. As Yinu calmly bites into apples gifted by Rohan, the friend himself gobbles them down furiously while Unsu stares in horror, muttering that no fertilizer could make fruit this perfect before screaming when Rohan tries to share his meal, only to yell at the shocked friend to hurry up and eat. Yinu proudly tells Rohan that he doesn't mind at all since he can just call the Sunenwan store and order his own box of apples right now. Yinu's dream of being special shatters when he sees his shop is already so packed with bookings that he can't make a difference. Yinu offers to pay triple the usual price, trying hard to talk them into selling. But even that didn't help at all. While the pair had a blast, the reporter was busy snapping photos of them. Soon, everyone knew that Emperor Apple was the one who helped Yinu get out of the hospital. Ryu explodes with rage at the article's claims, only feeding the endless rumors everyone is already fighting, especially since it looks like everyone thinks the apple is a magic cure. Chanu speaks to the goddess, saying that with plenty of supplies, he has to leave to take care of the nearby lands. Inu steps forward to tell Doji and Ari that they must now stand guard and protect the goddess. The goddess is dumbfounded that Chansu is leaving to conquer new lands, firmly believing it's only because he somehow learned a useless skill that has nothing to do with fighting. The goddess grabbed his leg to stop him from running, telling him the path ahead was too dangerous. Since Konu can't understand the goddess, He jokes that she's just clinging to him because she's hungry for his protein. Jansu beamed and asked if they'd be happy with just beef. Konu's heart pounding. He sprints into the freezing storage room to snatch the beef he ordered. Konu's heart races with pure thrill because he's finally holding real meat for the very first time. After coming back to Earth, he realized he was only eating meat that was grown inside a lab. Konu quickly puts the meat on the sizzling stove and starts grilling it. He admitted that the smell was so much better than the cultured meat he had always eaten. Doji was so hungry for the meat that Chanu had to stop him and tell him it was actually a special meal for the goddess. Even Ari feels a little let down because Doji has finished his meal and is already too hungry to wait for more grilled meat. As the meat sizzles in the pan, the goddess appears wild and unhinged to him, but Chanu only assumes she's starving and rushes to serve her the hot meal. To his total shock, the goddess tosses the delicious meat right away. Chanu is so shocked that he thinks the meat has gone bad, which is exactly why the goddess threw it away. Chanu bit off a tiny piece to taste and immediately realized it was sweet. He believes the magic is fading because the apple no longer delivers the same electric shock it did the first time, which is why the goddess didn't eat it either. He didn't realize the goddess was trying to stop him from going, but his foolishness had made him forget how to listen, so he couldn't hear her pleas. As Chanu promises to bring back delicious meat, Ari and Doji cheer happily at the exciting news. That night, Chanu stepped out into the dark just as he planned while Ari and Doji slept, leaving the goddess awake and shaking with worry until he reached the edge and the system asked if he was ready to move to the next level. Janu grabs the choice, steps into the next block, and is suddenly swallowed by a world of total darkness. He lifts the lantern to fight off the dark and realizes he has stumbled into a strange jungle that looks nothing like where he just was. Suddenly, a horde of tiny flying monsters dived at him, and Chanu had to run for his life. He sees that the enemies are so small he can't aim for their necks. So, he decides his only hope is to sprint back the way he came. Suddenly, the undead monster leaped over from the next block. Chanu freezes in shock, but just as he reaches to strike, he stops when he realizes the silent monsters are actually his friends trying to protect him from danger. As the zombies turned their rage on the bugs to wipe them out, Chanu slipped back into safety within his own block. Just then, the system chirps in to tell him he's earned bonus points for bringing down those evolved monsters. Janu stands frozen in shock when he realizes he's getting points from monsters the immortals have already taken down. Konu's face splits into a wicked grin as he realizes he's just found a massive pile of points. He suddenly realizes the world has shifted as he starts earning points and pulling in more customers. The scary creatures he used to run from are now his friends. While back at the store, Jizujin is overwhelmed by the endless stream of calls and orders. Rur admits that after letting the rumors grow for so long, he now knows letting them spread any further would be too dangerous. To bring order to the chaos, he commands Heiguzan to forbid any mention of the Emperor Apple and to answer every question with absolute silence, even when threatened, though Hyujin fears this strict quiet will be impossible to keep. As he talks, a sharp blade suddenly appears at his throat, making his joke turn into a deadly reality. Just as they started to get scared, someone from behind suddenly spoke up and said sorry for scaring them. Ryu whirls around to see Rohan, the sword master, holding a blade right against his throat. Ryu shivered with fear and begged Rohan to explain why he had come to the office. Rohan admits he talked to Ryu's boss, but didn't get what he wanted, though he still thinks Ryu will be more willing to help. Rohan then presses Ryu with the big question of who grew the Emperor Apple and demands to know where that person is hiding. Rui sprinted after Hyujin and begged her to tell Rohan the truth about everything. Hyujin is shocked to see Ryu cowering behind her like a frightened child. So in a panic, he begs her to tell Hyujin that he never thought Rohan would appear for a polite chat armed with a real sword. Jizujin felt let down by her experience and finally realized that bosses can be truly terrible. Even though Hyujin is scared, she stands her ground and warns Rohan that the company fiercely protects client data, which shocks Rohan so much he nearly knocks everyone out by drawing his sword. Yet instead of attacking, he drops it to say he doesn't need their help because he will find a farmer by instinct alone, leaving Ryu and Hyujin stunned until Ryu explains that sword masters have a superhuman sense of instinct that helped Rohan solve many problems before. Ajuin stood frozen, staring at Rohan with his mouth wide open, completely shocked that the words just leaving his lips could actually be real. 2 days later, Chanu waited quietly for Rohan to show up, since Hyujin had already told him to expect him. He sits there wondering why Rohan hasn't knocked on his door, even though 2 whole days have gone by. Suddenly, a warning popped up telling him that someone had broken into the building. Rohan was the only one who could do it. Standing by the door, he waited for someone to walk through, but when no one appeared, he figured there must be a mistake since everyone was supposed to come in through the gate. He dug through the system one last time and realized it wasn't just a glitch. He pauses to check that the coast is clear before moving forward. Then, nobody could believe their eyes when Rohan slashed his sword through a section of the barrier, leaving Chanu staring in stunned silence. Rohan felt a chill run down his spine the moment he saw the man, so he rushed forward to ask if he was the apple farmer. Chonsu puts on a friendly smile to hide his jitters, but Rohan ignores the act and goes straight to business, telling him he's there just to buy apples. Chonsu is left speechless by the sudden demand, so she asks how many apples he needs, and Rohan answers that while he wants 100, he wouldn't mind getting 200. Chonsu gasped in shock and yelled at Rohan that selling just 50 apples was the absolute limit, making his request seem impossible. The room silently agrees to take 50 apples at a jaw-dropping price of 200,000 gold each, which instantly tells Chonsu that Rohan doesn't care about fancy packaging or normal store prices, making Chonsu so impressed he's already thinking about selling him even more. Tansu walked Rohan to the apple tree, and the hungry boy was already drooling just thinking about the sweet fruit waiting for him. Tansu walked up to the tree and used his magic gift to make it grow instantly. Before anyone could blink, apples burst from the branches, and Chanu grabs his sickle, tells Rohan to wait, and starts collecting the fruit. Rohan calmly says it's not needed, then draws his sword and slices through all the apples so fast that Konu is left staring in shock, convinced he just witnessed something impossible. After the deal is finished, Rohan hands Konu the money and promises to return for another visit next time. Just as Rohan is about to leave, Konu rushes forward and clutches him tight to stop him. Chonsu quickly sees that Rohan might just be the perfect new partner to help them succeed with this fresh block. Chanu excitedly invites Rohan to taste his other crops, knowing they'll be a hit, but when he mentions potatoes, Rohan quickly shuts him down and turns to leave, so Chanu frantically tries to stop him by promising extra apples. Chanu secretly believes Rohan is good, so even though the boy acts strange and wild, Chansa tells him he must take over another block to keep the apple supply steady. To get what he needs, he asks Rohan for help and promises to pay him with a supply of apples. Chonsu wasn't sure his plan would work until Rohan walked up and told him he'd accepted the offer. Rohan sprints straight to the new block while Kona hot on his heels, trying his hardest to keep up. Chonsu stares in shock as Rohan dashes toward the block, wondering how strong he truly is, while Konu freezes in terror when he sees the ground soaked in a strange liquid and a monster suddenly jumps out right behind him. Just as the monster was about to eat him, Rohan pulled Chanu away and warned him to stay close because the place was dangerous, even though Chanu couldn't believe Rohan called him dangerous when he was the one hiding the monster, and after Chanu expressed shock at nearly being eaten by a plant monster, Rohan told him not to worry too much since Chanu would be the one running the block in the end. Chonsu stepped up alone to fight the monsters and clear the path. He flips the decapitation mode on to slice through monsters like they were nothing. Then once they're all defeated, he switches on the blessing of abundance. As Hujin walked through the block, Chonsu shouted her name and suddenly grabbed her attention. She beams at Chonsu, but her smile fades the moment she sees Rohan helping Chanu care for a plant, so she rushes over to find out what's happening and learns that Chanu is planting his roots there because he intends to take over the surrounding blocks. Jin shouts that she doesn't care about what he does, but her real worry is finding out why Rohan is standing right there with him. Chonsu then shares the trouble he's in right now. Chonsu is told that he can't wait to taste the apples growing on this new land now that they have finally arrived. Chonsu whispers that the ground is just a sea of puddles, but Rohan swiftly draws his sword to clear the grass for planting, a bold move that shocks Chonsu into instantly planting the seed and blessing it until a giant, bright-leaved apple tree blooms right before Hagen arrives. He was stunned by the apple's weird smell, and Chanu agreed, saying the air itself was to blame. It turns out the apples make the drink twice as fragrant and tasty, changing its flavor depending on when they're added, and Chanu admits he's still testing this new idea. Chanu held out an apple to Haegujin and asked if she'd like one, but the girl shook her head and politely declined. After spotting the plant monsters on the ground, Hujin calls them ostrich tails, leaving Chanu surprised because this is the first time he has ever heard of them. The creature fell in love with the life of an ostrich, slipping away into the shadows at sunset to hunt, which made catching it almost impossible. After Hun confirms the monster is perfect and takes a blood sample, she confronts Chanu about his part in hunting the rare ostrich tails. Although she clears Rohan's name, Chanu instantly agrees to sell the creature once Hujin reveals its high market value, causing Chanu to surrender in fear while Jizu Jin throws her hands up in celebration. Jijin stares at Chanu in total amazement, convinced he's the most handsome man alive and unable to believe the same guy is so good at farming and fighting. And on top of that, he even brings a sword master, leaving Hujun to admit that running into Konu feels like a real blessing. As Chanu cries out her name, Jizu Jun pulls herself out of a dream where she was imagining all the products she could still sell. Jizu Jin was furious that Chansu had ruined her imagination, yet she offered him everything she owned, only for him to remind her to open the bag he sent, which held pest control seeds and a building kit that he quickly used to construct a portable home for adventurers while planting those seeds, leaving Jizu Jin shocked that he could grow plants so fast and wondering exactly what kind of person Chanu really was. Soon after, he bought the new plot of land and left the goddess and her helper to celebrate like excited children, while Chanu, now a proud landowner, beamed with joy. When a group gathers all 100 tiny pieces of single block, they finally get to call the whole thing their own. Chana was thrilled to finally have his own room on Earth, a place that was nearly impossible to find for anyone there. When you buy the land, you also get a fresh set of tools, with the coolest being the power to trade your block straight away. Chanu got a system message telling him that the powers of block can have come from either the Apostle's God or the block's own nature. Shonu feels pure joy because this special gift feels exactly like the goddess herself. The system asks him to choose the block's fate, giving him the power to either help it grow or watch it wither away. Realizing that life is worth living, he chooses to grow. He believes this act will make the goddess grow even stronger. Chansu turns on his growth power, but the world around him looks just the same. Chansu realized nothing had changed yet, because the game was still in its first stage. He peeked at the status window and saw that this special growth trait touched every part of him. Chansu grinned until he spotted a menu option that let him make his summoned monsters grow huge. Mitch nearly loses his courage as fear wraps around him, suddenly seeing that his greatest strength is also his biggest curse. But there is one terrible part about this cursed food. Even the undead monsters have gobbled it up. Chanu felt a wave of relief, knowing that even though they had grown, they were still small enough to handle. Shanu walks out to fight the monsters like he always does and beats them easily, just like before. He feels a thrill of joy because watching those undead monsters grow stronger means he's racking up more points. Suddenly, Rohan popped up right behind him, leaving the other man totally stunned since he hadn't felt a thing coming. Chana knows Rohan is there the moment he notices his apple is already missing. Rohan is already puzzled by the word, but Chanu just reminds him that it hasn't even been a week since he got the last batch. Chanu knew that Rohan was doomed to die if he kept eating all those apples. Chanu asks how many apples they need, gets told they want 120 but could take more, warns Rohan to tweak the flavor for the new place, offers a free taste, and then freezes when he sees the goddess and her followers hiding and playing right under the tree he just walked up to. The group nearly drops to their knees in terror when they spot Rohan, who looks terrifyingly dangerous. Suddenly, Rohan slashes his sword, and Chanu panics, fearing he will hit everyone. He dives to protect them, but then realizes Rohan was just trying to get the apples. Chanu worried Rohan had missed the goddess because he called his familiar, but Rohan quickly showed he could feel the blocks growing stronger and wanted to keep training, promising Chanu he'd still pay for it. Chansu's eyes sparkle with joy at the news that Rohan is willing to pay, so he quickly asked to know the exact amount of the offer. Rohan grinned while explaining exactly how much money he was ready to spend, and Chansu felt a surge of happiness as he eagerly shook Rohan's hand to welcome his honored guest. Rohan asked Konu if he could do it, and Konu said yes with confidence, though he worried about hurting the land, so Rohan promised that nothing bad would happen. Chansu worries things might explode without warning, but Rohan tells him to chill since there's no cause to be afraid. Chansu tells Rohan he can't make monsters because he doesn't have enough points left to spare. Ron told him he didn't need help fighting the monsters, only a quiet corner to rest in. And Sue's eyes go wide in shock the moment she understands exactly what Rohan wants. Nu doesn't mind the cash, but he tells Rohan that money isn't all he wants and that he's after something else entirely. Donato pours out his heart, begging Rohan to stand by his side as a shield. Chanu trusts Rohan to watch over them, knowing their world is full of danger and he is one of the best swordsmen alive. Rohan agrees to discuss Chansu's deal only if they can make the growth power stronger, so Chanu happily promises to boost it by 50,000 points a day and hand out 10 extra apples each day. As Rohan frets over the apples and asks for a different way to buy them, Konu steps in to tell him not to worry about the fruit. While Doji and his friends freeze in terror, they realize Rohan is about to join them. Chansu feels sure the familiars are truly happy now that a sword master is there to watch their backs. Chansu spun around to see the group acting in a way none of them had expected. Rohan sees the truth, but Chansu tricks him by pretending the group is just shy because they are new. Chon-Su tries to welcome the group and introduce Rohan, but they spin around and bolt right away. Chanu quickly calms himself to ask Rohan for his first order, and soon they're checking another part of the block when Rohan suddenly feels something hiding among the brushes. They move closer to take a peek, only to find a cat sleeping right there. Chanu spun around in shock, wondering how something like Hamsul could be wandering where he never expected to find it. Noticing the cat looked so calm, Chanu thought it was harmless and rushed to pet it right before Rohan could shout a warning. The cat shot up from its sleep to face a terrifying shadow, scrambled away as if it had spotted a ghost, and then let out a hiss that made Chanu's back go cold. The status window told Chanu that the cat was actually an agent of negation who had declared war on his entire block. Chon-Su is shocked that the apostle declared war on him just for giving it a gentle pat. Tears streaming down his face, he begged Rohan if the cat was bringing bad news for attacking him. But Rohan just told him he was talking nonsense. Chon-Su feels the cat is mad since he poked it without asking permission first. Hanu steps forward to make peace with the cat and wonders why he's fighting such a small thing until Rohan interrupts to say he won't be battling the feline because the apostles are about to emerge from the border blocks as humans. Chanu was shocked to find that while killing monsters was easy for him, humans were a totally different story. Rohan, as if he knew what Chanu was thinking, told him they could kill negation if they wanted to, since the temple had a way to bring them back to life. Chon-Su gasped at the news and rushed to ask Rohan if it was a checkpoint, to which Rohan nodded, while Konu frowned in worry, fearing his group couldn't afford a second chance if they made a mistake. The negation apostles can go wild without getting caught. Chon-Su feels outmatched and urgently asks Rohan to join the fight, and Rohan says he'll help if he can. Just like we guessed, a bunch of monsters who hate the negation and the humans who work for it popped up in the block. One of them yells through a megaphone, screaming for Chu to come out. At the alchemy headquarters, Hu-Jin picked up the ostrich tail, sap, to get a good look at it. She wonders just how amazing Konu is, imagining his strength comes from a divine artifact made for those close to a god, or perhaps from the remains of a dead one that lets him use that god's power. After thinking through every option, Hu-Jin is sure that Hanu isn't holding an artifact because those mighty items only work when they match a god's true nature. As Hu-Jin wandered lost and wondered what lay ahead, Ansu burst into the room, turning Hu-Ju in shock into terror as he stepped forward, only for Anu to suddenly cry out at Yunu about the strange ostrich tail sap in his hand and demand to know where he'd found it. The question leaves her stunned, but she knows for sure that another wild moment is coming. But back at Chanu's block, the apostles urge him to step outside before they lose the will to keep searching. But without anyone knowing, Chanu and Rohan were secretly hiding in the nearby bushes. Chanu watches the guys acting wild and asks Rohan if they feel safe dying since they can come back to life, and Rohan agrees that their fearlessness comes from knowing they will likely wake up again. Chon-Su feels a wave of relief knowing Rohan is right beside him. Even though they only have a moment to fight before the enemies crush them, he has thrown his whole faith on Rohan. Suddenly, Chanu bursts out of his hiding place with his sickle in hand, only to be met with the apostles' mocking laughs and a command to go pick up some apples. Another guy laughed at Chon-Su, mocking him for being outnumbered and telling him he had no chance at all. But the team starts to panic as Chon-Su falls into a strange silence, unable to move or do anything at all. After a few minutes of silence, Konu finally speaks to the apostle, calling him nothing but trash and saying he's not worth worrying about. Chon-Su felt safe, trusting that the sword's master had his back and that Rohan had already handled the troublemakers before they could cause any trouble. The apostle's rage boils over, and he gives Chon-Su one last shot at handing over the emperor apples. Chon-Su snaps back, saying if he really wants an apple, he should go buy one at the department store himself. The apostle, burning with rage at Chanu's reckless words, demanded if he was truly brave enough to face the trouble his arrogance would cause. Chon-Su crushed the guy's pride by telling him to go ask his own mother all the rude questions he was throwing at him. Chon-Su's words cut deep enough that the furious man screamed for his men to kill Chon-Su and tell the alchemy office that Anu keeps nagging Hu-Jin about the sapin, yet she stays silent because she must keep the customer's secret safe. Yunu admits he only asked because he had to pay for the job. Yunu admits that the ostrich tail sap Hu-Jan brought is far purer than usual, making it a rare and hard-to-achieve feat. Yinu slides a contract across the table to Hu-Jin and asks if she's ready to keep making their sap. Jujin admitted she needed the cultivator's permission first, so Yinu suggested they just sign a quick deal right now. Yinu's heart swelled with joy at the news, so she told Hu-Jin that anyone who cares for the sap is always welcome in the alchemy department. Chon-Su stepped forward, determined to face the negation apostles one more time. But in the background, he swings his blade at a giant monster 10 times his size, only to slice the beast right in half, proving that a true hero is simply someone who saves their friends. But he wonders why Konu feels so brave, while Chon-Su secretly plans his move to defeat the skeletons closing in on him. As the skeletons rush at him, Chanu unleashes a devastating move that chops their heads off in an instant, leaving the Apostle stunned to see his minions floating like dainty feathers while Chanu laughs at how pathetically weak they are. Chon-Su stares at the pile of bones and asks the Apostle if he is finally ready to quit. But the Apostle refuses to be knocked down by a simple farmer. The Apostle pulls out a glowing orb to summon a huge beast named Heracles. Heracles looks so frightening that a lion's head is fused right onto his left shoulder. Chanu didn't run away in fear, but he still managed to tease the Apostle by calling him a terrible guesser. The Apostle laughs at Chanu and warns him that he's about to regret his choice, since Heracles is a weapon that costs a fortune. The Apostle told Heracles to run after Chanu. Heracles swings a huge punch, but she slips right out of the way without a scratch. Before Heracles could move again, Chu swung his sickle at him and cut him in half with one sharp strike. The Apostle gasped in shock when Heracles hit the ground, a funny twist since he had just bragged about how strong Heracles was. The Apostle screams in agony that Heracles was a monster he built over 10 years, which Konu dismantled as if it were nothing, before he angrily turns to his fourth-generation subordinate Soi to scold her for refusing to join the battle. That little push reminds the guy he was the bold one who chased Konu, so he has no right to complain about getting beaten up by a farmer. Soya tells the guy she's happy to get her hands dirty for extra money, since her job was just to show the way. Chon-Su beamed with joy until Soya stared him down with glowing red eyes, a sudden warning that someone had just told him about her deadly curse that can end life. The system warned Xiao that the skill was deadly, but before he could react, Soya's power had already knocked him off his feet. As soon as the annoying man sees Chon-Su walk right into So's trap, he lets out a huge, mocking laugh. He warns Chon-Su that stepping in front of a negation will bring a terrible fate upon her. She yells at the guy to make sure he doesn't forget why they came here in the first place. He sprints away to the apple tree, but promises he'll get revenge later for what happened to his creation. As he sprints through the woods, the sweet scent of apples hangs in the air, and he knows he's almost there. Then he notices a small change in the shadows standing right behind him. But as he spun around, he found no one waiting for him, and Rohan plummeted from the sky, instantly recognized by the man as the legendary sword master everyone knew. Rohan manages to bring him down, just as Chon-Su wakes up to find he is back on Earth. His mind showed a fierce fight against darkness, but then suddenly he found himself standing in a completely new place. Suddenly, the world around him looks nothing like what he thought he knew. He whirls around to see his parents waiting right there, his face lighting up with joy as he runs straight to them. He jumps into their arms for a tight hug, tears streaming down his face. Chon-Su screams out, demanding to know where the two of them went and begging them to never leave again. Suddenly, his worst nightmare comes true as his parents shove him away and walk off while he screams in terror, begging them not to go. Konu screams in pain until Rohan suddenly pulls him back from his strange dream. He warns him that he's caught in Soi's cruel trick, meaning everything he just saw was a lie. As Rohan slashed at Soi to save Chanu, she stood in shock that he had let himself get into such a dangerous spot. TH crashes to her knees right before Chon-Su, blind with rage from her tears, leaps at her with his sickle to punish her. Rohan gets to the girl before anyone else and slashes her down. His swampy water gulps down Soya, just as Rohan apologizes for jumping in without being asked. Chon-Su didn't get mad. He felt thankful for the news. Chon-Su urges us to return to base and clean up, while he whispers his big dream of becoming the world's strongest power by first seizing every single block around us. He asks Rohan if he can keep helping, and Rohan happily agrees, promising to work for free as long as he gets paid in apples. Chon-Su tells Rohan that he can eat all the apples he wants to pay him back. As Chon-Su and Rohan walk back to base, they run into the black cat again, so Chon-Su asks Rohan about the deal they made with it. Rohan quietly reveals that the cat is actually one of the 7 calamities, a fierce beast that fiercely protects its own land. Chon-Su freezes in horror as he realizes the cat he loved is actually a deadly trap, meaning he walked right into his own death without knowing it, while the soldier who refused to fight now sits in a cell after losing his battle against Chanu. The system tells him that a huge fine is demanded because his mighty faction is so different from Konu's humble one, forcing him to pay 1,000,000 gold coins, but he refuses, calling it unfair and insisting that a sword master stood right beside Konu. As soon as the system sees that the man can't pay his debt, it sends him straight to negation. When he saw it, the man panicked and begged to go back home, suddenly desperate to pay. Suddenly, he was yanked from his cell by terrifying monsters who, though dead, had refused to stay that way. Just as his troubles pile up, a scary apostle named Manhwa arrives and warns him that unless he explains everything slowly and carefully, he will face a punishment far worse than death. The man traveled to Manhwa to tell them he had finally found the hidden garden where the emperor's apple grows. Manhwa sees the man is lying to save himself, but he insists Rohin ruined his plans, a claim she doubts because she knows the huge fines wouldn't have been demanded if Rohin had stood with Chanu. The man kept shouting at Manhwa that he was telling the truth, claiming Soy had lost too, which shocked Manhwa so much that she stood up and walked over to him, making the man feel like a coward as the intimidating woman approached, only for Manhwa to explain that they couldn't blame Soy, meaning he alone would have to face the consequences of their failure. Gon grinned with a wicked gleam in his eye and told the man he had a deal to offer him. She grabs the man's head, forces him to sign a deal that makes him her prisoner until he finishes her orders, and then commands him to sprint to the training ground and get to work. The man insists it's impossible, but Manhwa threatens to turn him into an undead if he won't listen. She whispers that the only way to fix their mess is to sneak into the apple farm. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment next part in the comment section. Also, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and like the video. Thank you for watching, and see you next.